The dawning of the Age of Mortals has begun.
So guys, it turns out we got an actual leak, like we just got an actual leak, not some random dude that knows a guy who knows a guy at Blizzard that just seems to have passed by the BT room and saw like this little thing, but an actual one that might be strong evidence for the next expansion that is to come. Now, it is called Dragonflight, and there is a registered website that is not yet available, and there are also some code strings that show the pre-purchases for the actual expansion, and a few other things with some talks even of 4 new classes being added. While it could of course be misleading, this seems now highly likely. So were all the people actually right? Are we actually getting dragons in the next expansion? And how will this work out exactly? You must have wiped out a million times in your WoW years, but you probably didn't have Squad OV with you. And this is an app that records your instances automatically, and you can see your complete performance from spell visualizations to death recaps, and best of all, it is free. You don't have to do anything but install it, and you can share yours and watch your friend's perspective. So use the link in the description and check out Squad OV. Well, it turns out that most of the leaks were actually right, and the expansion will be Dragon Team. Now, not right as in the concepts they talked about, but in regards to the actual team. Now, while I did say in the previous video that it won't be dragons, I did mean that it won't be just dragons, and I still stand behind that, but it does seem with this leak that the name of the next expansion will be World of Warcraft Dragonflight, which means that the focus will be on them, although, of course, that doesn't mean it will be just them. If you remember, for example, Warlords of Draenor wasn't really about the Orc Warlords of Draenor, but it was more the setup, and the expansion was about the Burning Legion. Similar thing with Battle for Azeroth, where the end of the expansion was about Ashara and the Old Gods. So what exactly are these leaks that were just made available? Seeing that the expansion will be announced in about 2 weeks from this video's release, it is highly likely that these leaks are actually legit, as really the expansion concept, the website, and everything should be ready at this point, and they're probably just finishing up the details. So it is 100% possible that this could actually be real. If you remember, sometime before Shadowlands was announced, we got the artwork of Bolvar as a Lich King, which hinted at the cinematic that was shown not long after that, and it turned out to actually be completely legit. Of course, it didn't mean that Bolvar was the center of the expansion and that the Lich King was really anything more than just a stepping stone, but the actual leak was real. Well, this time, here is what we have. The actual official World of Warcraft website public source code shows strings for the so-called Dragonflight base, heroic, and epic expansion pre-purchase, and there is also a code for a website called dragonflight.blizzard.com, which exists but seems to be inaccessible temporarily. Some users even dug out more evidence, and that is that a web certification for this address was registered just last week, alongside some new WoW Classic updates. Now, when you combine this with the evidence we got months ago with spell effects, textures, and all the dragon-related stuff, it starts to make a lot more sense, especially when you add this, the store mount packs, the pattern that has been obvious with Wizard for years at this point. On top of all of this, Ysera being present in the Shadowlands and being foreshadowed to return in the future, as her story never really ended, although that has been a thing with most Shadowlands storyline, like a lot of them never really ended. So really guys, I think this might just actually be it. Of course, as within a leak, this could of course turn out to be false, but as we're only 2 weeks before the actual announcement date, this might just actually be legit. I know it has been leak season these past few months, so people started to pretty much just not believe anything that people supposedly leak, but really, we only had 2 actual leaks so far. Everything else is just speculation and just random people posting their fanfiction on the forum and just really stretching the evidence that we have. These 2 things are the textures I previously mentioned revealed months ago, and now this thing we just got. Codes on the official website for the various expansion packages, and this registered link called Dragonflight. So if this really is the case, how can this expansion actually work out? I mean, we just defeated some crazy dead god that manipulated literal gods of the entire cosmos, and now we're just going to go with the Dragonflights. As I mentioned before, dragons are really not that big of a deal in World of Warcraft. Originally, they defeated Galakrond, were empowered by the Titan Keepers, and were in charge to take care of the planet, but they never really did all that much. One of them went crazy, the other rebelled, and they just defeated one of their own and lost their powers, so it's not like they have ever been a super big deal or anything on the scale of the Jailers, Sargeras, Old Gods, or whatever else. I mean, one of them was even corrupted by an Old God, and as we learned, the old gods are just tools used by the all-powerful Void Lords. So what I think this could relate to is that we might be getting a Cataclysm 2.0. Not really a Cataclysm as in the Azeroth shattering again we got previously, but a universe-wide Cataclysm that will affect Azeroth, and now we would need the help of the Dragonflights to help us out once again to protect this planet. Now, I've talked about this a million times, but there has been evidence and hints at the end of Shadowlands that the first one mechanism that pretty much just keeps the universe in check may be breaking up, which could lead to a crazy catastrophe, which could lead to the entire Jailer line of what is to come and him wanting to unite the universe so that it never actually happens. This is one of the scenarios, and I gotta say I wouldn't be surprised if they completely just went with something like that. Blizzard attempted to reuse Wrath of the Lich King and many of its iconic characters and storylines through the Shadowlands, which obviously failed, so they may be thinking about doing another Cataclysm-like expansion, which was really when WoW was quite near its peak, at least player-wise. On the other hand, it could totally be related to the discovery of the Dragon Isles that have been hinted at for ages now, that mysterious energy that corrupted Galakrond, and this could be some sort of a threat we are yet to discover, and also it is entirely possible, as some people speculated, that this big threat won't really be present in the next expansion, and this is Blizzard just setting things up for future expansions, as they really just ran out of threats. But honestly, I just think that would not be a good idea in the slightest. That's pretty much the entirety of BFA and Shadowlands has literally been foreshadowing for this next puppet master, yet another puppet master up the chain of command. So really, I mean, they actually have to show us who this guy is at some point. They can't just foreshadow for like 10 years without actually telling us anything. And lastly, it could be related to Nosramu and time travel, as there have been some hints for that as well in the Shadowlands, but I think that would just not be a good idea, as last time they did time travel, it really was just beyond the mess, and just the entire concept of time travel leaves plot holes after plot holes, and after Shadowlands, we really don't need further plot holes. Other than these actual leaks, there have been some images going around with the new logo and Alexstrasza being the center of the artwork, similar to how Bolvar was during the Shadowlands, and there have been some talks about apparently 4 new classes being added with just one spec, although I don't really think this is based on any actual evidence. The logo and the Alexstrasza thing could totally turn out to be real. Personally though, I think this might be a good idea, and this might be what they meant with what they said in that interview, that they want to return us back to that old World of Warcraft RPG feel of fighting dragons and getting us back on Azeroth while having big cosmological threats in the background. It is likely the Light Void will be present along with the first one mechanism and all things we learned in the Shadowlands, while dragons and denizens of Azeroth may actually be the focus of the expansion. This could return back World of Warcraft to the old glory days and could really scale down the crazy cosmological stuff, although obviously we still got 2 weeks to wait until we actually learn what is going on. Thank you for watching. Check out who could be behind the news coverage tag by clicking on the screen, and check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.